The Life and Times of Theodore Addison, 5th Grade Challenge, by Jamaal. Tuesday, Part 1. The next morning, Ted arrived early and stored his laptop in his locker. Then he sent his moth into the classroom secretly. It was to wait in the back behind the file cabinet until Ted called for it. As he stepped back out of the classroom, other students began arriving, and he caught sight of Veronica trudging through the hallway. Diamond wasn't with her, though. No one was with her. If anything, people were giving her looks of disgust. The leaked audio had spread, and now there was no one in 5th grade who didn't know what she did. He couldn't resist the opportunity to gloat over her recent misfortunes. He rushed to her and asked, "How does it feel to finally reap what you sow? And for what? I'm gonna tip the scales today. And tomorrow, you already know who's gonna win the sports day contest." "Addison, I have bigger issues to deal with," she said, not even looking up at him. "Just buzz off." "Nah, keep that same energy you had when you were plotting to screw us over. Now, no one wants to talk to you. Now you want to be sad. Now..." Slam! With one swift motion, Veronica grabbed Ted by the shirt and arm-barred him into the locker, giving him the death glare. The loud slam echoed through the hallway as everyone stopped to look at them. "Veronica!" Mr. Gibson shouted as he rushed over to break the two up. Ted held up his hands to signify he wasn't fighting. Just as soon as Mr. Gibson arrived to pull her off of him, though, she let go and said, "Just forget it," and kept walking, this time to the bathroom. He isn't worth it. In the bathroom, she took a deep, slow breath to calm down. It was going to be a long day, and she had a lot of fences to mend. It might take at least a week for things to go back to normal. On top of that, she had no idea what to say to Amber, or if Amber would even be able to see her sincerity. Saying sorry wasn't going to cut it. She'd have to figure something out as she splashed water over her face. But as she walked to the sink, she saw Amber, wearing the same rainbow dress as the day before. She was quietly humming as she straightened her hair one last time before going to class. Before stepping forward to apologize, Veronica hung back and looked as she brushed her hair. As Amber brushed and brushed, trying to get each follicle just right, it started to click for her that Amber was a human being who felt all the same joys, pains, and anxieties she did. The more she watched her, the more she realized how good a friend Amber was to her before she went to join the in crowd. And she realized how much she'd mistreated Amber once her social status was solidified. Out of respect, she waited for Amber to finish before trying to talk with her. Even now, she didn't know what to say. "Are you waiting for the sink?" Amber asked. "I'm done now." "Oh, you knew I was here? I heard you mumbling to yourself as you came in, and I heard you stop there." "Oh. Look, I don't know what to say, but I feel really bad about how I treated you. You didn't deserve it. You were a really good friend to me when I first got here, and I can't believe what happened between us. I really wish I could take it back, you know?" Amber listened as Veronica did her best to apologize. It was clearly something she never did well. "Is this your way of saying you're sorry?" Veronica nodded. "And that you will never treat anybody like that again?" "Well, I still have a few scores to settle." "Are you kidding me? You're always looking for a reason to be cruel. Drop it!" Amber scolded in her mousy voice. "You don't understand, Bookworm. Some of these people have it coming." "You have it coming. But If I can forgive you, you can forgive them. But you don't understand. Wait. You forgive me? Amber paused before saying, I'm getting there. Yes, I forgive you. You mean like we can start over like none of this ever happened? Veronica asked, eyes starting to tear up. Amber looked away for a moment, still mulling over her decision, but she couldn't help but nod her head. She hadn't quite gotten over the pain, but was willing to move past it. Before she could look up, though, Veronica was a foot away from her, arms wide open. Amber didn't share many hugs with friends and classmates, so it was awkward for her at first. Hearing Veronica's sniffling and feeling her heaving was a bit too much to handle, but it made her feel better that Veronica was truly sorry for what she'd done. Amber returned the hug, prompting even more heaving and sniffling from Veronica. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Amber saw Diamond holding her phone, recording the whole thing, eyes also watery.
That was so beautiful,
she said as she joined the crying session. Dee, don't share that. I probably look like a slobbery mess, Veronica protested. At least let me send the picture out. Let everybody know you made things right. I guess. As long as Bookworm's cool with it. What do you say? Amber shrugged and nodded, but she had bigger issues to deal with. She looked in the mirror again and ran her fingers through her hair once more before leaving. After she was gone, Diamond walked over to Veronica and put her hand on her shoulder as she said, You did the right thing. Yeah, but I think maybe I should have just stayed myself when I first got here. Then I wouldn't have to be cleaning up messes. In the hallway, James wandered towards the classroom, unsure of what to expect. He had made peace with Amber, but he needed to see her face to face to know for sure that she was sincere. Breaking his train of thought, Ted and Derek caught him and asked how he was doing. James summarized his conversation with Amber the night before and told them everything seemed to be okay. Ted, though, wasn't having it.
After all the stuff Veronica put you through, you're just going to brush it off? Guys, I am tired of fighting, James said, shoulders slumped. Can we just find a way to settle these conflicts? Oh, I'm settling it all right. She needs to know this can't continue. I'm gonna break her today. My sister told me she heard what Diamond and Veronica talked about. She said Veronica told everything she did, and she said that everyone hated her for it. Is that not enough punishment, Ted? Will she not change? Are you sure of this? Do you really need to break her, or do you just want to? Both, Derek said. How do you think your sister even got that information? Yeah, it's the 1-2 punch, bro. You know, we're doing this for you, right? Ted added. This is not okay. I will not accept it, James said. It'll keep us from being on her hit list from here on out. It's gotta be this way, Derek said. Elohim, God, does not approve of this. Vengeance is mine. I will repay. Have you never read this? Ted and Derek were taken aback. They hadn't expected James to be the one championing forgiveness of Veronica, or for him to bring God into the discussion. It wasn't easy, though, to trust that Veronica had really changed. How about this? If Veronica comes and apologizes to you before my demonstration, we'll let it go. If she doesn't, Ted shrugged his shoulders, as if there was no other option.
James was uneasy about their insistence on retaliating, but he hoped they could resolve their problems peacefully. Prayerfully, she would quickly come to apologize to him. He started into the class, with everyone looking at him pitifully. The class went silent, but then a few phones started buzzing. As they checked their phones and saw the picture of Veronica and Amber hugging, James sat his books on the desk. More phones buzzed as students started to murmur about the picture. James hadn't been paying attention, though, until he felt two familiar arms around his waist. "Morning," Amber said as James turned around to look at her. He was surprised to be greeted this way publicly. The gasps and ahs from their classmates were more embarrassing than either could have imagined. But it was worth it. James returned the hug, and some students snapped pictures of them, immediately sharing them with their friends. One immature boy ran over and said, "I now pronounce you boyfriend and girlfriend. You may now kiss your boo." "Dude, let them live in peace. Nobody asked what you thought," Diamond said as she and Veronica came into the room. "Besides, they're cute together. Go ahead and be happy, you two." Like magic, Diamond's words changed the mood of the room. The kids went from mocking the two lovebirds to celebrating them. One boy even patted James on the back. "Good morning, everyone. Can we get started with today's activities?" Mr. Gibson said, closing the door behind him. The students all took a seat, James and Amber feeling relieved. They flashed each other a smile and thought they were in the clear to be together. As for Ted, while he was happy for his friend, his mind was fixated on one thing. He watched and waited to see if Veronica would approach James and offer an apology, just as she had to Amber. Maybe she didn't have the chance yet. To Veronica, though, all was well in her world. She felt like a giant weight was lifted off her shoulders. She stole a glance at Ted across the room, thinking maybe burying the hatchet with him would be for the better. "For today's contest, we have the Hobbies Day competition," Mr. Gibson started. "There are 3 boys and 3 girls who will present their artistic entries, and each contestant will be given a score based on the ingenuity of the idea, the execution of the idea, and the presentation of the idea. The order they will be presenting will be assigned randomly." The teacher took the names of the 6 students, written on a small slip of paper, and mixed them around, then selected the names. First up is Alberta. Second, Jessica. Third, Diamond. That's interesting. All girls first. Oh well, luck of the draw. Fourth, Theodore. Fifth, Anthony. And 6th, Robin. Okay, Alberta, you'll have 5 minutes to set up, and then we're off. Alberta opened by asking for the first few rows of desks to be pushed back, and then she brought in what looked like a Lego carpet, green and wide. She laid it across the floor and with the help of a few friends began bringing in Lego buildings constructed to look like the city's skyline. Some buildings were waist high, while others were taller than her. She added cars on the roads and people on the sidewalk. Everyone marveled at what she produced. Then she pulled up a picture of downtown Miracle City on Google Maps to display on the overhead projector. Finally finished, she took a deep breath, stepped back, and said, "Ta-da! A Lego sculpture of the bank, built precisely to scale. Each Lego represents about 5 feet. I only had enough Legos to build 1 square mile, so I picked the southeast corner of Oracle Park on Spurgeon Street and went from there. Besides, the park gives me an opening to actually get in there and put more details in there. What do you think?" The other students, including the boys, couldn't help but walk over and inspect her construction. Some flashed pictures and took videos. Others tried to find buildings they knew. Amber spotted the Archie she liked going to. James spotted his apartment building, but didn't say anything. "Absolutely marvelous, Alberta." Mr. Gibson said as he too took pictures of the Lego skyline.
Do you think you might want to pursue this as a career? Architecture firms make models like these when they want to show off what their new buildings will look like against the backdrop of the rest of the city.
I don't know. Maybe if I still like this when I get older, she replied.
Very good. Just so you know, older will be here before you know it. Heck, sometimes I still feel like I just graduated from college, and that was many years ago. Anyway, let's tally up your score. Ingenuity, 8 out of 10. Execution, 10 out of 10. Presentation, 9 out of 10. Total score, 27 out of 30.
The girls cheered wildly for Alberta, who was pleased with her score, but wished she knew how to get that perfect score.
All right, next is Jessica. After this is all cleared, you'll have 5 minutes to set up.
While the room was being transformed, Ted sat at his desk, starting to second-guess himself. He wouldn't have figured a Lego sculpture would capture the imaginations of his classmates so easily. Maybe it would have been better if he beat her to the punch and made something like it, maybe on Minecraft or something like that. It didn't take long for Jessica to set up, since she was only holding a sheet of paper with a poem on it. She, like Ted, felt intimidated going after Alberta's Lego display. Now that everything was clear, the students were back in their seats and the room was quiet. Jessica looked around the room. Her stomach was churning and her face turned red as she looked at the expected faces of her classmates.
You may begin, Mr. Gibson said.
Right, she said. So I wanted to read a poem to you. My poem to you called Roosevelt. Okay, let's begin.
Time out, Veronica said, standing up.
You can't do that, one boy said.
Well, I'm doing it anyway, she replied as she grabbed Jessica by the arm and pulled her out of the class. Mr. Gibson was annoyed, but didn't try to stop her. It wouldn't have helped anyway, since she was out the door already.
What are you doing, Veronica?
Jessica whispered loudly.
Look, I need you to calm down and read your poem, okay? It's all about presentation. Mr. Gibson's gonna hammer your score if you and all the time. Why are you even doing this? You're not gonna get me like you got bookworm, so forget it. I can handle this myself,
Jessica said as she turned around to re-enter the classroom.
Jess, I'm here to help. Well, I guess I can't use that word anymore, it seems. Anyway, I know what you need to do to feel good about yourself when you finish. Okay, hear me out.
Jessica crossed her arms, rolled her eyes, and said,
Fine.
Veronica told her.
Think about when you're reading poems to us. You're calm, you're relaxed, you're flowing. Why? It's 'cause we're your friends. Even if you mess up, which you don't often do, you don't get hung up about it. You keep going and don't even notice. Think about it. When you're in front of two friends, do you feel nervous? No. What about 3 friends? No, Jessica answered again. 4? Okay, I get it. Good. Pretend everyone is your friend. And there are just more of them. And you're doing what you always do at lunch. You're a natural, Veronica said, putting her hands on Jessica's shoulders. Jessica started nodding, accepting the encouragement. They headed back inside, and Jessica began reciting her poem. Sorry, guys. I just needed to gather myself. My poem is called Roosevelt. And I wrote it to show how decisions in Washington affect people like me. If I can see this at 10, then why can't you? If you had to go homeless like me, maybe you would too. Or what if it cost an arm and a leg to fix a bad tooth? A lot of you adults are just selfish, to tell you the truth. From your pores, your contempt for the poor ooze. As if living in my car is a life I'd choose. I could start a singing career with a tragedy as my muse, with songs like, which public park shower should I use? Do you think 'cause we're homeless, we just sit around and abuse? Mom doesn't work hard enough? Really? That's what you accuse? It's expensive being poor, if only you knew. It's a choice between food and a bottle of Theraflu. Now election day's coming, another chance to choose between Charlie Roosevelt and William Andrews. And while I don't like the latter, he can't buy enough clues. For all Chuck's failings, he can't stop blaming the Jews, or the Muslims, or the blacks, whatever lights your fuse. He YouTubes bombing Somalia just for the views. You think your situation's bad, and now you're singing the blues. Could you handle refugee life as seen on the news? For all this talk of how rich we are, most of you are confused. That money flows to the top, the rich gain while we lose. Charlie has you thinking, we deserve this, so aid is refused. But when your day comes, you'll see you were never in on the ruse. With just a few light stumbles, she got through her poem and took a bow as the girls gave her a standing ovation. She mouthed a thank you to Veronica as she walked triumphantly back to her seat.
I guess that timeout was helpful, Mr. Gibson said. Good teamwork, Veronica. So, Jessica, for your score. Ingenuity, 7 out of 10. Execution, 10 out of 10. Presentation, 8 out of 10. Total score, 25 out of 30.
It wasn't the score the girls were hoping for, but it was hard to come close to Alberta's display. Maybe it would have been better if Alberta went last to maximize the wow factor. Fortunately, in their view, it didn't seem Mr. Gibson was measuring Jessica against the previous display.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised, Jessica, that you went with such a deep topic. Knowing about your experiences and what you've been through, I can see that you've grown up a lot faster than other kids. I think it's brave of you to discuss this in class, and for that, I think you should get a bonus point tacked onto your ingenuity score, bringing your final score to 26 out of 30.
Again, the girls jumped out of their seats to applaud Jessica, who was wiping a tear from her eye as she took another bow. The boys, too, gave her generous applause. Most of the kids knew her situation, but had never pictured what it was like to be Jessica from day to day. When it was time to move on, Diamond sprung from her seat and said,
All right, I'm gonna need y'all to move these desks again. Sorry, fam.
She was ready to roll with her presentation, not even waiting for Mr. Gibson to give her the green light. She arranged the desks into a T shape to be used as a catwalk that reached almost to the back wall. The girls could sense what she had in mind, especially since she was sporting a new outfit and hairstyle. Instead of the purple plaid shirt and khaki pants and black dress shoes, she now wore white Air Force Ones with shoelaces dyed purple and orange. She had a white polo blouse and an orange plaid skirt with purple leggings that came down to her knees. She had been getting compliments about her makeover all morning from the girls and endless stares from the boys. After Diamond finished pushing the desks into place, she dimmed the lights and brought out some strobe lights, purple and orange. Next came a radio, but she didn't turn it on. Instead, she stepped onto the desk and began to address the class.
Lately, I've been thinking about how far I've been from home. But just as far as I was from home, I was far away from myself, too. Y'all know my story. I grew up across the river in St. Grace. Where I came from, I might dress something like what I'm wearing today. I kind of got away from that when I moved to this new environment because I thought you wouldn't accept me easily. I was worried that the old me was too ghetto. My mama doesn't even know I'm telling y'all this, but I started to speak the King's English because I thought that's how I'd be accepted in a mostly white environment. I tried to do things your way, and maybe that worked for you, and maybe I could make it work for me, but me works better for me. And I realized y'all liked me for me regardless. I can have a perm or box braids, and y'all would still like me for me, ebonics and all. So, for today's presentation, I wanted to show off some clothes that help me connect even more with my culture. And not only that, but connect with African culture too, and marry the styles together. I hope you'll enjoy it.
With that, she hopped off the desk and turned on Guapale's song, Milk and Honey. Rihanna's diamonds would have been cliche for her.
What does this little girl know about milk and honey? Mr. Gibson thought. First up, Diamond said, as the first model stepped onto the runway, is Alice in the athletic wear. This all-white basketball uniform has a kente cloth trim both on the shirt and shorts. In addition, her headband has the same design, but if you flip it inside out, it's white, so you can alternate your style. The students took pictures, the girls especially, as Alice turned and posed before walking back off the catwalk. Next, we have Natalie with a sundress. But check this out. When we turn out the lights completely, the color patterns glow in the dark. The patterns drew oohs and ahs from the students, especially when Natalie started dancing in the dark before turning around to lead. As she stepped down off the desk and exited the room, the final model came into the room. Lastly, we have my dad. Mr. Forte stepped into the room, surprising the students. He stepped up onto the runway, making sure his clothes looked just right as his daughter beamed with pride. I never liked how my dad's business suit was always so dreary. He started a juice company, not a gray clay factory, so I decided to give him this. It's an orange sash that drapes down to the stomach. Really, it's just like a scarf with the ends sewn together, and a couple other alterations. For my dad, since the company's colors are orange and green, one side is orange, but it's twisted so you can see the green on the back. We can mix it up with even more colors and designs, and best of all, since it's just a shawl, you can take it off and pair it with a different suit or whatever you want to do. Or, if he wants to tuck it in, there are buttons along the sides, so he can close it and tuck it in the suit. See? He doesn't even need a tie anymore. Thanks, Daddy. Mr. Forte finished modeling his clothes and stepped off the table, pumping his fist for his daughter's performance. As the lights came back on and the music faded, the girls shot up from their seats to applaud while Diamond took a bow. The models then came back into the room and joined Diamond for a second bow on top of the desks. Impressive work, Diamond, Mr. Gibson said. I can tell your dad is proud of you. So quick question, Mr. Forte. Would you wear this on a business trip? Oh, yes. This was incredibly well thought out. My daughter has a real eye for fashion. Perhaps the only thing I would change is the material for the shawl since we ran out of silk. With this wool, it still works, but we want to keep it from bulging when I tuck it in. I noticed that. Glad you saw that too, Diamond. So here's your score. Ingenuity, 10 out of 10. Execution, 9 out of 10. Presentation, 8 out of 10. Total score, 27 out of 30.
Wait, what? 8 out of 10 for presentation? Why?
Lighting. You showed off clothes with lots of bright colors, with strobe lighting. Creative, but it undercut your purpose, Mr. Gibson said. Diamond groaned in frustration at the oversight, but Veronica encouraged her and started another round of applause as the models left the room.
Diamond waved bye to her dad, who left for work. Now it was the boys' turn, right after the bathroom break. The students lined up and headed out, the girls still buzzing about the contestants' performances. While in the hallways, Derek passed Diamond and said, "Great job today. That was really good." "Thanks. I could make some clothes for boys, too, if you want. That is, if you trust my fashion sense." The look on Derek's face, though, said he wasn't sure that'd be a good fit for him. And just so you know, it's not to change you. It's so you can feel good about yourself. Know what I mean? The best version of you, Diamond added.
"I getcha. In that case, let me think about it."
Diamond laughed and said, "You could have just said no thanks."
"By the way, about yesterday, I hope you aren't mad about that. I didn't know who to trust, you know?"
"Oh, you mean kick me out of your best friend's house acting like I was there to sabotage you? Yeah, it's cool. I'm not mad about that at all," she said, obviously being sarcastic. "But to be honest, if I were you, I would have felt the same way, so I guess we should put it behind us. Though I gotta admit, the recording of what happened at my house got out real fast. You and your buddy wouldn't know how that happened, would you?"
All right, class, let's get back to it," Mr. Gibson said, bailing Derek out.
The group filed back to class as Ted eyed Veronica and James carefully. She still talked with Diamond and now Amber, but nothing was said to James. She hadn't so much as glanced at him the whole morning. Ted didn't want to ask James if she apologized yet, since he knew James would try to dissuade him from exacting revenge on her. When they got settled in class, Mr. Gibson told Ted he'd have 5 minutes to get ready for his presentation. And then it hit him. In his quest to avenge James, he forgot to rehearse his speech. He never made a note card he could follow, and he hadn't fully organized his thoughts. He went outside to get his laptop from his locker and came back in and turned his volume as loud as it would go, hoping it would fill the room. But he was terrible at multitasking, and his focus on setting up made it hard for him to finish gathering his thoughts. Now that everything was ready, he looked up at the class, unable to figure out how to open his speech. For some reason, he never had trouble performing in front of a crowd. But when it came to giving a speech, he was at a loss. And none of the techniques for getting over stage fright worked for him. The advice to picture the audience naked seemed like a disgusting joke.
So, for today's presentation, I wanted to, show you something I came up with last week. Not last week, last month, but I never had the chance to, make it until now.
Ted took a deep breath and tried to continue.
So, by show of hands, how many of you wish you could talk with your pet? They tell you what's wrong and you help them, or something like that.
A few students tentatively raised their hands, wondering what Ted was about to say. Truly, all the students wished they could talk with animals, but they were worried Ted would ask one of the students to come forward for some strange scientific experiment that, for all they knew, could swap their minds with their pets and have them doing embarrassing things like trying to lick themselves in inappropriate places. Ted looked at the low energy of the class and felt doomed.
Okay, so what I came up with is something called, and I think this name is just sort of okay, but it's called BioPC. And the way it works is I can put it on an animal or anything, really, anything alive, and it will let you talk with it. It can understand you, and you'll be able to understand it.
The class still looked at him quizzically, wondering what to expect next. The idea seemed interesting, but that kind of idea deserved a better introduction. With that, Ted summoned Ion forward. The moth fluttered from the back of the class to rest on Ted's shoulder. Still nervous, Ted looked around the room, searching for encouragement or anything to make the oral presentation easier for him. It was strange the way he could talk with ease when he wasn't being graded on it. Then he caught sight of Veronica, who was covering her mouth to hide her silent laughter at him. And now she had his attention. She pinched her cheeks and mouthed, "My little teddy weddy," mocking him. His nervousness made him forget the fact that he needed to get justice for his friend, and soon enough, he was back in fighting form.
"Class, this is Ion. I found this moth in my basement yesterday. I can talk with it directly, and it can talk to me too, just like a normal human being. See? Say hello, Ion."
The moth, though, said nothing. Ted checked the radio signals to make sure they were on the same channel and then tried again.
"Say hello, Ion."
Still nothing. Ted got confused and started to check the laptop to make sure the volume wasn't muted. Everything was fine, though. The only thing that could have been wrong was that the moth refused to speak. Then it clicked for Ted.
"Hey, Ion, I'll give you some more Kool-Aid if you say hi to
Hi, everybody," Ion said, its voice coming through the computer.
"Oh, real funny," Ted said, folding his arms as the class laughed.
"What did you expect? You left me back there behind a file cabinet, cold and hungry."
"Okay, Ted. So how do I know this is really the moth talking and not some AI program?" Mr. Gibson asked.
Ted stopped to think for a moment and said,
"I guess you might have to take this on faith, but the best I can do is show you that it understands me. Watch. Ion, would you fly in a figure 8 pattern 5 times and come back to rest on my left elbow?"
The moth took off and fluttered around the class 5 times in a figure 8, just as Ted asked, and settled back down on his left elbow. His classmates' jaws dropped. It was real. The students started buzzing, and Ted smiled as he crossed his arms in satisfaction. One of the kids then asked what the moth wanted humans to know, as if it could pass on some universal wisdom they could learn from. The moth answered, "Stop wearing flowers on your clothes if you don't want me coming near you. I tried one time to go up to a girl just like this one," he said, hovering over Amber, "and she nearly killed me. And after all that, the flower was fake." The students laughed at the unexpected answer, but then the smile disappeared from Ted's face. He said he needed to wrap up his presentation. Glancing at Veronica, he looked back to James and asked,
"Did Veronica ever apologize for what she did to you?"
Put on the spot, James looked around the class, all eyes on him now. He looked back at Ted and shook his head, anxious to get out of the spotlight.
"So she apologized to Bookworm, but not to you. It seems saying sorry to Bookworm was the easier part."
Ted turned back to Ion and asked,
"Remember what we talked about yesterday? That if you did one special thing for me, I'd give you a gallon of Kool-Aid and let you be on your way? Now's the time."
He squinted his eyes, pointed at Veronica, and gave the command.
"Ion, use hydro pump!"
"What?" Veronica yelled as the moth turned to her. "No!" another student shouted. The fire hose materialized from under the moth's abdomen and shot a ferocious blast of water square in Veronica's face, knocking her out of her seat onto the floor, along with the girl sitting next to her. She was collateral damage. As the girls checked themselves for injuries, the class sat in shock at what they just saw. Ted just stood there, grim-faced, as if he'd just bombed an enemy combatant. There was no celebration or satisfaction in his expression, just the look that he did what he had to do.